Welcome everyone, welcome back to the session. So today I'm going to I'm going to repeat what was done in the past. Since it's been a week, I haven't got a single call asking for any clarification or clearing any doubts or asking me or requesting me to repeat any particular aspect. The session cannot be cancelled, so I will go ahead and continue with what I've decided for today. So today I will talk about passage comprehension. You may get 2 passage comprehension or it could be 1, but the total number of questions that you will get for A.P.S.S.D.C written test will remain 40. That needs to be answered in 30 minutes. So if you look at the verbal ability pattern, you will have critical reasoning and theme detection. You will have fill up the blanks. You will have sentence correction or sentence improvement, and you will have reading comprehension, where you need to answer, probably, we are not very sure, you may have to answer 2 paragraphs, and each of these paragraphs will have 5 questions each. We have done some aspect of passage comprehension already. Today I am going to repeat what was covered in the past. The lines will open up at 3:15 today. You will have the numbers flashed on your screen from 3:15 onwards. If you have any questions, if you have any doubts, if you want me to repeat anything as far as Capgemini is also concerned, for Capgemini essay, interviews, body language, etiquette, behavior, or interview questions, how to face interviews, if you want me to repeat any aspect of Capgemini, I am ready to do that, but for that you need to call and ask for it. Infosys, we have covered the entire portion, but I am going to repeat what was covered in the past. You can also take help of couple of apps which is available on Google Play Store, Pocket Verbal Ability and Pocket Aptitude. Both are available for free, and this is how it looks like. What you can do is you can download either of these 2 apps and you can practice at your free time. If you have a smartphone which runs Android, it will be available for free. Okay. Now moving on, passage comprehension, I am going to repeat this entire thing today onwards. Since I am not getting any calls, I don't know what much to do, so I will repeat what I have done. So you cannot blame me that the session is not interactive at all. I am trying to make it interactive, I am trying to make it helpful, but seems like most of you are not interested to get the right kind of help. You are not calling, so unless you call, I will not know what exactly is the problem that you are facing in terms of your preparation. Alright, so reading comprehension, you will get a passage and you need to answer 5 questions each from both the passages. You may get either 2 passage or you may get just 1 passage. But as far as the tips are concerned for passage, the first and foremost thing is read the passage and try to make a note of dates, years, numbers, persons, incidents or events, which will be a vital information for you. Make notes of it. Pay attention to the subject of the passage, which or what is the precise thing the author is talking about, the main idea, that is what the author is saying about the subject, and the tone of the author, what kind of tone has he adopted, which is manner the author has adopted in this passage. Is he going against it? Is he supporting it? Alright. So as far as the tips are concerned, understand the structure. The gist is the summary, the overall meaning of it. The gist basically is the general idea, the structure and the tone. This will also help to build a thematic composition, logical sequencing of a passage. When you read, when you are taking down information, you can just make a logical sequence once you understand the gist of the passage. Alright. Now moving on, there are few approaches that you can adopt as far as comprehension is concerned. So instead of reading the entire passage, read critically the first and the last paragraph. Generally what the author is saying can be identified in the first few lines of the passage. So when you read the first few lines or the first paragraph or the first 2 sentences, you will get a fair idea of what exactly the author is trying to say. For the rest passage, examine quickly what the author has said about the subject. For longer passages, try to put down 10 to 15 words for each paragraph which you feel are central point of the passage. In case if you have multiple paragraphs for the passage, the best way of the approach is write down 10 to 15 words for each of the paragraph, which will be your critical or the theme or the key point of the particular paragraph in the entire passage. So when you bring all that together, it will give you the complete meaning, or you can summarize. Basically, that's the gist. The approach number 2 is identifying certain words, the structural words is what we call it, that tell you the important ideas or transition in a passage. The most common structural words are given below. So there are some continuity words, contrast words, and conclusion words. Continuity words is something where the idea is continuing. The idea is spoken and the same idea is carried forward. If he is agreeing to a point, he continues to agree. What are the words that you can pick? Similarly, moreover, additionally, in the same way, likewise. For example, I say that campus recruitment training helps students understand what is the pattern that the companies adopt or follow to hire students from colleges. Likewise, we also have programs focused for teachers as well, which help them identify the right kind of educational need or training needs. So when I say likewise, I am continuing the same theme, I am continuing the same thought process. All right. Let's look at the contrast word. Nonetheless, however, but, although, despite. Nonetheless, however, these are contrast words. When we say contrast word, I am basically putting forward an opposite meaning of it. For example, if you work hard, you will succeed. However, you also need to work smart. So when I am saying however, I am basically giving a opposite thought process of what I have said before. So when you look at these words in the list, contrast words like nonetheless, however, but, although, despite, these are the words which gives you a contrarian or contrary idea. Conclusion words where the author is concluding. For example, thus, therefore, hence, in summary, in conclusion. Okay? So these are the examples of continuity words, contrast words, and conclusion words. Now what do we mean by these? Continuity words, the author would support his point of view further. Contrast words, the author would introduce a contrarian point of view. He has said something, now he will say the opposite. Conclusion words, the author would sum up his argument so far. So whatever he has said so far, he will conclude it. All right. So this is part of approach 2 only, where you are identifying the words. Now let's move to approach number 3. Approach number 3 says, try to recognize the words that represent positive and negative role in the passage. These words will let you decide whether the author is for or against the subject. A few examples of such words are given below. Positive words and negative words. Positive word, for example, efficient, enthusiastic, bright, fortunate, passionate. Okay? So these are some examples of a positive word. Now what are the negative words? For example, foul, alarming, detrimental, pessimistic, stressful. So when you look at some of the words, when you recognize some of the words in terms of positive or negative, you will be able to identify if the author is supporting, if he is agreeing, or if he is disagreeing with what's been stated. Approach number 4, here it talks about PQ approach, which means passage first, question next. So first we read the passage, then we go ahead and look at the questions which we need to answer. So it says read the entire passage thoroughly first and then read the questions. Scan through the passage and keep going back and forth with questions and passage. So you are reading the question and the passage simultaneously. Read the first 2 paragraphs, scan all the questions and see what you can answer. Then read para 3 and 4. Scan the question, see what you can answer, then read para 5 and 6. If you have multiple paragraphs in the passage, basically you read 2 paragraphs, you read the questions and see if you can answer that question based on the first 2 paragraphs. Then you read the next 2 paragraphs and read another 2 questions and see if you are able to answer. That way you can save time. You need not read the entire passage, because you will get 5 questions on each passage. The entire passage may not be completely relevant, just a portion of it will be relevant. So PQ approach basically talks about where you read the passage first, portion by portion, part by part, then you approach the questions. If I have to look at the most efficient way, that would be the QP approach, which is question first, then the passage. Here it says read all the questions with their answer options first and then the passage, where you are reading the question, looking at the option and then trying to find the answer from the passage. How do we do it? Read question number 1 with all the options, then go through the entire passage to answer it. Then read question number 2, go through the entire passage, then question 3. Now since you have read the entire passage for question number 1, you will remember certain aspects, so you can answer 2 and 3 easily. Just read all the question stems without reading the answer options, then read the passage and try answering the question by reading them with the options. So basically it says just read the question, go back, read the passage, then look at the options. Now you will be able to find out which is the best option that you can choose. All right. So here is the first passage which I am putting forward, and I will have 4 to 5 questions after each of the passage. Here is the first passage for you. Laws of nature are not commands but statements of fact. The use of the word law in this context is rather unfortunate. It would be better to speak of uniformities in nature. This would do away with the elementary fallacy that a law implies a lawgiver. If a piece of matter does not obey a law of nature, it is punished. On the contrary, see, I use the word contrary here. On the contrary, we say that the law has been incorrectly started. All right. Now let's read the question and we'll go back and look for the answer. It says, if a piece of matter violates nature's law, it is not punished. If you look at this particular sentence, this would do away with the elementary fallacy that a law implies a lawgiver. Now let's start here. If a piece of matter does not obey a law of nature, it is punished. On the contrary means, however, we say that the law has been incorrectly started. Okay. Now what is the question? The question is, if a piece of matter violates nature's law, it is not punished because it is not binding to obey it. There is no longer superior being to enforce the law of nature. It cannot be punished, but the question is why it cannot be punished. It simply means that the fact have not been correctly stated by law. The question is why any piece of matter which does not follow the nature of law is not punished. It's not punished because there is no superior being to enforce the law of nature. Because when I say it would be better to speak of uniformities in nature everything is uniform. There is nobody above anybody. So there is nobody on top who can enforce the law or say that the law needs to be applied. That's why option B is the correct answer. The lines are open now. I would appreciate if somebody can call and ask questions and clarify doubts. 2354-0726, 2354-0326 are the 2 paid numbers. 1-800-425-4039 is a toll free number. Let's move on. Question number 2. Laws of nature differ from man-made laws because the former state facts of nature. Here, what is former? Law of nature is former. What is latter? Man-made law is latter. The former states facts of nature. They must be obeyed. They are natural. unlike human laws, they are systematic. The question is, what is the difference between the law of nature and man-made laws? Based on this particular passage, you need to identify what is the difference between law of nature and man-made laws. Okay, I'm going to leave this here so that you can read the entire passage again and see what is the answer. Okay, so please read the passage. No, read the passage and figure out what is the correct answer. We are talking about the difference between man-made laws and the nature-made laws. All right, so here is the passage for you. Just read and understand and then answer. Okay, I'm going back to the question. Laws of nature differ from man-made laws because the law of nature states the fact of nature, because they must be obeyed. What must be obeyed? Law of nature must be obeyed because they are natural. What is natural? Law of nature is natural. Or D, unlike human laws, they are systematic. What is systematic? The law of nature is systematic. And the correct answer is A, the former state facts of nature. It's derived from the truth, it's derived from the facts of nature. Next, the laws of nature based on observations are conclusion about the nature of universe, true and unfalsifiable, means you cannot falsify it, figments of observer's imagination, subject to change in the light of new facts, means when there is a new fact, it can change. What is the observation made about the law of nature? That is the question. If you want, I can go back to the passage so that you can look for the answer here. Okay, I am going to the question now. The laws of nature based on observation are conclusion about the nature of universe, true and unfalsifiable, figments of observer imagination, subject to change in light of new facts. And the correct answer is it's subject to change. It's been observed that when there is a new fact emerging, the law changes. All right, moving on. The author is not happy with the word law. The author is not happy with the word law because it connotes rigidity and harshness. Rigidity means something which is not flexible. Connote means it signifies. It connotes rigidity and harshness. It implies an agency which has made them. It does not convey the sense of nature's uniformity. It gives rise to false belief. Here we are talking about the author's point of view, the author's perspective, the author's opinion. Why does the author feel he's not happy with the word law? Okay, let's go back to the passage. It says laws of nature are not commands but statement of acts. The use of word law in this context is rather unfortunate. It's unfortunate because it's a statement of act, it's not a command. Okay, now let's read the question again. The author is not happy with the word law because it connotes rigidity and harshness. It implies an agency which has made them. It does not convey the sense of nature's uniformity. It gives rise to false belief. Option A is the correct answer. It's because the law is not flexible, it's rigid. When we use the word law, that means it has to be followed. The law could punish an innocent person, that's why it's harsh. It's not flexible, that's why it's rigid. So we look at a passage, we go back and forth and we try to answer the questions. Okay, I'm moving on with the next passage now. At this stage of civilization, when many nations are brought into close and vital contact of good and evil, it is essential as never before that their gross ignorance of one another should be diminished, that they should begin to understand a little of one another's historical experience and resulting mentality. It is a fault of the English to expect the people of other countries to react as they do to political and international situations. Our genuine goodwill and good intentions are often brought to nothing because we expect other people to be like us. This would be corrected if we knew the history, not necessarily in detail but in broad outlines, of the social and political conditions which have given to each nation its present character. I am going to read out the passage once again, nice and slow, so that you can understand. Then I will pause so that you can read. Let's go. At this stage of civilization, when many nations are brought into close and vital contact for good and evil, it is essential as never before that their gross ignorance of one another should be diminished, that they should begin to understand a little of one another's historical experience and resulting mentality. It is a fault of the English to expect the people of other countries to react as they do to political and international situations. Our genuine goodwill and good intentions are often brought to nothing because we expect other people to be like us. This would be corrected if we knew the history, not necessarily in detail but in broad outlines, of the social and political conditions which have given to each nation its present character. It's basically talking about behavior, it's talking about certain aspect how people from England, that's why they are called English, they perceive people from other countries. Now here is the question. According to author of mentality of a nation is mainly product of its. So mentality is a product of what according to the author? The options are history, international positions, politics, present character. So according to the author, mentality of a nation is mainly product of history, international positions, politics and present character, and obviously the correct answer is history. Based on the history, the mentality of a country changes. Next, the need for a greater understanding between nations was always there, is no longer there, is more today than ever before, will always be there. The need for a greater understanding between nations was always there, is no longer there, is more today than ever before, will always be there. And the correct answer is more today than ever before, because countries can interact with each other today. There is more interaction, there is more communication, there is more coordination. That's why there is a greater understanding, and we also need greater understanding between nations, because the wars have gone up, the conflict has gone up. That's why there is need for more understanding between nations today than ever before. All right. Next question. The character of a nation is a result of its mentality, culture change, gross ignorance, socio-political conditions. The character of a nation is the result of its mentality, cultural heritage, gross ignorance and socio-political conditions. What is the reason behind the character of a nation? You need to pick one of these. And the correct answer is socio-political conditions, because it's constantly changing. The political situation is constantly changing, the society is constantly changing, and that's why the character of a nation changes. Next, According to author, his countrymen should read the story of other nations, have a better understanding of other nations, not react to other nations, have vital contacts with other nations. As per the author, what is the need? Read the story of other nations, have better understanding of other nations, not react to other nations, and have vital contact with other nations. What is the answer for what the countrymen should do today? And the correct answer is have better understanding of other nation, where they understand the history, where they understand the heritage of other nations better. Okay. Now Englishmen are the people who live in Britain, United Kingdom, especially Britain, London and adjoining areas. Englishmen like others to react to political. Okay, I need to add one more over here. Okay. Englishmen like others to react to political situations like us, themselves, others or each others. Englishmen like others to react. Englishmen like others to react to political situation like us, themselves, others or each others. And the correct answer is themselves, because they always feel they have their own point of view and they are entitled to that point of view. That's why they think that Englishmen like others to react to political situation like themselves. All right, let's move on to our third passage, and quite shockingly we still do not have any calls. This is the third passage that I am doing. Today perhaps your only association with the word polio is a Sabin oral vaccine that protects children from the disease. 55 years ago this was not so. The dreaded disease, which mainly affects the brains and spinal cord, causing stiffening and weakening of muscles, crippling and paralysis, which is why I am in a wheelchair today. If somebody had predicted when I was born that this would happen to me, no one would have believed it. I was seventh child in a family of 4 pairs of brothers and sisters with huge 23-year gap between first and last. All right, so we just lost the audio a bit. So I will read from the second last paragraphs. I was seventh child in a family of 4 pairs of brothers and sisters with huge 23-year gap between the first and last. I was so fair and brown haired that I looked more like a foreigner than a Dawood Bori. I was also considered to be the healthiest of the brood. Okay, I'm going to read this again since we had a very short interruption. Today perhaps your only association with the word polio is the Sabin oral vaccine. Let's have the slide. I'm reading the slide. Today perhaps your only association with the word polio is the Sabin oral vaccine that protects children from the disease. 55 years ago this was not so. The dreaded disease, which mainly affects the brain and spinal cord, causing stiffening and weakening of muscles, crippling and paralysis, which is why I am in a wheelchair today. If somebody had predicted when I was born that this would happen to me, no one would have believed it. I was the seventh child in the family of 4 pairs of brothers and sisters with huge 23-year gap between the first and last. I was so fair and brown haired that I looked more like a foreigner than a Dawood Bori. I was also considered to be the healthiest of the brood. Now let's read the question. In his childhood, the narrator was a weakling, very healthy, tall and slim, short and stout. If you look at the last sentence, I was so fair and brown haired, leave that. Look at the last one. I was also considered to be the healthiest of the brood. So the correct answer is, in his childhood, the narrator was very healthy. Next, just a moment. Okay, in this passage, the word brood refers to polio victims, foreign children, children in the family, Indian children. Let's look at the last sentence again. I was also considered to be the healthiest in the brood. He's comparing himself with all his brothers and sisters. That's why the correct answer is, okay, I'm so sorry, I went to the wrong slide. Okay. In this passage, the word brood refers to polio victims, foreign children, children in the family, and Indian children. So obviously, I am talking about children in the family of the author. Next, the narrator was the seventh child in a family of 8 children, 16 children, 23 children, and 4 children. Now let's look at what the passage says. It says, I was the 7th child in a family of 4 pairs of brothers and sisters. So brothers and sisters put together 4 pairs. Each pair will have 2. That means the correct answer is 8. 4 into 2 is 8. So he is the 7th child in a family of 4 pairs of siblings or brothers and sisters. Okay. Next, in this passage, the narrator is a patient of heart disease, polio, paralysis, nervous weakness. It's very simple. The whole passage starts with that disease. For example, if I have to go back, it says, today perhaps the only association with the word polio. So obviously, he is talking about polio. In this passage, the narrator is a patient of polio. Next question. In his childhood, the narrator looked more like a foreigner than a Dawood Bori. This was because he was a foreign child. He was a very healthy boy. He was, there are quite a few spelling mistakes, excuse me for that. He was tall and smart, and he was fair and brown haired. What is the reason he looked like a foreigner? If you look at the last line, the second last sentence, I was so fair and brown haired that I looked more like a foreigner, which means he was fair and brown haired. So that is the correct answer. In his childhood, the narrator looked more like a foreigner than a Dawood Bori. This was because he was fair and brown haired. All right. So here we go with another passage. This is passage number 4 which I am doing. Still no calls whatsoever. The strength of the electronics industry in Japan is Japanese ability to organize production and marketing rather than their achievements in original research. So I'm going to read this paragraph, then I will pause, then we'll go for a break, and we'll come back and look at the questions. The strength of the electronics industry in Japan is the Japanese ability to organize production and marketing rather than their achievements in original research. The British are generally recognized as a far more inventive collections of individuals, but never seem able to exploit what they invent. There are many examples, from the TSR-Z hovercraft, high-speed train, Sinclair scooters to the Triumph, BSA and Norton motorcycle, which all prove this sad rule. The Japanese were able to exploit their strengths in marketing and development many years ago, and the success was at first either not understood in the West or was dismissed as something which could not have been produced only at their low price. They were sold because they were cheap copies of others people's ideas, churned out of a workhouse which was dedicated to hard grind above all else. I'm going to read the passage again so that I'm going to go slow so that you can absorb it. We'll come back from break and we'll take questions. The reason I'm taking the break right now because none of you are bothered to ask questions. Nobody is calling. So I cannot keep just reading and reading and reading. That is not how I train. So I'm going to just read this out and then we'll take a quick break. The strength of the electronics industry in Japan is the Japanese ability to organize production and marketing rather than the achievement in original research. The British are generally recognized as a far more inventive collection of individuals, but never seem able to exploit what they invent. There are many examples from the TSRZ hovercraft, high-speed train and Sinclair scooter to the Triumph, BSA and Norton motorcycle, which all prove this sad rule. The Japanese were able to exploit their strength in marketing and development many years ago, and their success was at first either not understood in the West or was dismissed as something which could have been produced only at their low price. They were sold because they were cheap copies of the other people's ideas, churned out of a workhouse which was dedicated to hard grind above all else. So this is the entire passage. We'll take a break, we come back and we'll look at the 5 questions for this passage. The lines will open up again after the break. All right, thank you. Welcome back, everyone. I had put up a message during the break time, so I hope that was clearly visible and clearly understood. The lines will open up now. You will see three numbers flashed on the screen. There you go. You have three numbers. The first two numbers are easier to reach compared to the toll-free number, so please do call and ask your questions. All right. While I wait for the call, I'll go ahead with this passage. I'll read this again and then we'll look at the questions. The strength of the electronics industry in Japan is the Japanese ability to organize production and marketing rather than their achievement in original research. The British are generally recognized as far more inventive collection of individuals but never seem able to exploit what they invent. There are many examples from the TSRZ hovercraft, high-speed trains and Sinclair scooter to the Triumph, BSA and Norton motorcycle, which all prove this sad rule. The Japanese were able to exploit their strengths in marketing and development many years ago, and the success was at first either not understood the West or was dismissed as something which could not be produced only at the low price. They were sold because they were cheap copies of other people's ideas, churned out of a workhouse which was dedicated to hard grind above all else. Now let's look at the questions. Question number 1. It is evident from the passage that the strength of a country's industry depends upon original research, international cooperation, dedicated workforce, electronic development. Obviously, the correct answer is dedicated workforce. When the people work dedicatedly, it shows a positive impact on the industry. Question number 2. The sad rule mentioned in this passage refers to the inability of the Japanese to be inventive like the British, the inability of the British to be industrious like Japanese, the lack of variety in Japanese inventions, the poorer marketing ability of British. It clearly states how it was not clearly marketed. That's why option D is the correct answer for question number 2. Number 3. The TSRZ hovercraft, high-speed trains, Sinclair scooters, etc. are the symbol of Japanese success, British failure, British success, Japanese failure. All these were manufactured in the Western countries, but it failed. So it basically talks about British failure, because they were not marketed very well. Next, according to the passage, prosperity in industry depends on productivity, incentiveness, marketing ability, official patronage. We are primarily talking about marketing in this passage. That's why that's the correct answer. Next question. The main theme of the passage is electronic industry in Japan, industrial comparison between Japan and Britain, the role of marketing efficiency in industrial prosperity, the importance of original research in industry. Like I said, we are specifically talking about marketing. That's why C is the correct answer for this particular question. All right, let's move on. One more passage I have here. The lines are still open. You should remember the number by now. So please do call and ask your questions. That's the number 2354-0726, 2354-0326. Passage. He saw nothing. He had no knife or sharp instrument. The grafting of the window was of iron, and he had too often assured himself of its solidity. His furniture consisted of a bed, a chair, a table, a pail and a jug. The bed had iron clamps, but they were screwed to the wall and would have required a screwdriver to take them off. David had but one resource, which was to break the jug with one of the sharp fragments attached to the wall. He left the jug fall on the floor and broke in pieces. He concealed 2 or 3 of the sharpest fragments in his bed, leaving the rest on the floor. The breaking of the jug was too natural an accident to excite suspicion, and next morning Gola went grumblingly to fetch another, without giving himself the trouble to remove the fragments. David heard joyfully the key grate in the lock as guard departed. I will read this again so that you can understand what I am saying. He saw nothing, he had no knife or sharp instrument. The grating of the window was of iron, and he had too often assured himself of its solidity. His furniture consisted of a bed, a chair. We have a call? Okay. His furniture consisted of a bed, a chair. I'm reading. Please don't interrupt. Okay. He saw nothing, he had no knife or sharp instrument. The grating of the window was of iron, and he had too often assured himself of its solidity. His furniture consisted of a bed, a chair, a table, a pail, and a jug. The bed had iron clamps, but they were screwed to the wall and would have required a screwdriver to take them off. David had but one resource, which was to break the jug and with one of the sharp fragments attack the wall. He left the jug fall on the floor, and it broke in pieces. He concealed 2 or 3 of the sharpest fragments in his bed, leaving the rest on the floor. The breaking of the jug was too natural an accident to excite suspicion, and next morning Gola went grumblingly to fetch another without giving himself the trouble to remove the fragments. David heard joyfully the key grate in the lock as guard departed. Now here is the question. David was in a hostel, he was in a dining room, he was in an army barrack or a prison. Obviously he was in a prison because he tried to break open and escape. David heard the key grate in the lock when the cell door was shut, when cell door was opened, when storeroom was opened, when the storeroom was shut. Here we are talking about the cell door, the the storeroom, and the storeroom was when it was shut, he got to hear the sound. The guard left the fragments because he didn't notice them. He wished to punish David. He was too lazy to bother. The guard did not even bother to clean all the fragments of the broken jug because he was too lazy. Next, David probably broke the jug in the morning, during the night, after breakfast at exactly 3 p.m. and it happened in the morning, so that's why we say after breakfast is the correct answer. You need to read the passage and look at the details. Only then you will be able to answer these questions. Next, David was planning to carve his name, make his escape, tease the guard, call for breakfast. Obviously, he wanted to escape from the prison, and that's why B is the correct answer. Next passage, we still don't have calls. I'm going to read this passage and one more after this, and we'll call it off. In the world today, we make health an end in itself. We have forgotten that health is really means to enable a person to do his work and to do it well. A lot of modern medicine, this includes many patients as well as many physicians, pays very little attention to health, but very much attention to those who imagine that they are ill. Our great concern with health is shown by the medical columns in newspaper, the health articles in popular magazines, and the popularity of television programs and all those books on medicine. We talk about health all the time, yet for the most part, the only result is more people with imaginary illness. The healthy man should not be wasting time talking about health. He should be using health for work. The work does the work that good health possible. All right. Question number 1. Modern medicine is primarily concerned with promotion of good health, concerned with people suffering from imaginary illness, concerned with people suffering from real illness, concerned with increase in efficiency in work. So, modern medicine, it basically deals with imaginary illness. People think they have some disease, but in reality they do not. So, modern medicines are primarily dealing with that. The passage suggests that health is an end in itself, health is blessing, health is only means to an end, we should not talk about health. What does the passage suggest? Obviously, the passage suggests health is only means to an end, it's not an end itself. Next, talking about the health all time makes people always suffer from imaginary illness, sometimes suffer from imaginary illness, rarely suffer from imaginary illness, often suffer from imaginary illness. One thing is clear, people suffer from imaginary illness, but does it always happen? Does it happen sometimes? Does it really happen, or does it happen very frequently? And it happens frequently, that is what the passage says. Okay. Next, the passage tells us how medicine should be manufactured, how healthy man should or should not do, what healthy man should or should not do, what television program should be about, or how best to imagine illness. Obviously, D is not the right answer, it is B, which talks about what healthy man should or should not do. Instead of thinking about his health, he should think about the work. A healthy man should be concerned with his work which good health makes possible. He should be concerned with looking after his health. He should be concerned with his health which makes work possible. He should be concerned with talking about health. Option number A and option number C both are similar, but here we are talking about in option A, we are talking about he should be concerned with his work which a good health will make the work possible. Okay? That is why that is a correct answer, because that was the opening line of the paragraph. Moving on, this is the last passage for today. We still do not have any calls. Courage is not only the basic of virtue, it is its expression. Faith, hope, charity and all the rest don't become virtues until it takes courage to exercise them. There are roughly two types of courage. The first, an emotional state which urges a man to risk injury or death, is physical courage. The second, more reasoning attitude which enables him to take coolly his career, happiness, his whole future or his judgment of what he thinks either right or worthwhile, is moral courage. I have known many men who have marked physical courage but lacked moral courage. Some of them were in high places, but they failed to be great in themselves because they lacked moral courage. On the other hand, I have seen men who undoubtedly possessed moral courage but were very cautious about taking physical risks. But I have never met a man with a moral courage who couldn't, when it was really necessary, face a situation boldly. Talking about moral courage and physical courage, and what's the difference? Question 1. The man of courage is cunning, intelligent, curious, careful. Obviously, a person who's courageous is careful. He is taking steps after taking into consideration the positives and negatives. So, he is cautious, he is careful. Next, physical courage is an expression of emotions, deliberations, uncertainty, defiance. Physical courage, when we talk about, we don't think, that is why we say it is emotional. We just pick up a fight without knowing the repercussions of it, that is why it is an emotional decision. A man with moral courage can defy his enemies, overcome all difficulties, face a situation boldly, be very pragmatic. Obviously, the person who thinks from his mind, whose mental strength is higher, can face any situation in a very bold manner. Next, people with physical courage often lack mental balance, capacity of reasoning, emotional stability, will to fight. What is the problem they face? People who think they are physically stronger than being mentally strong. Obviously, they have the problem of lack of capacity of reasoning. Reasoning means looking at the reasons, logical thinking, that is reasoning. They don't look at things logically, they just go and fight just because they are physically strong. Next, all virtues become meaningful because of faith, charity, courage, hope. This is fairly simple. All virtues become meaningful because of courage, because the whole passage is talking about courage. All right. So that's about, we did almost 8 passages today. Okay, 8 passages. I read out the passage, but I was going slow. These passages were done in the past where I explained each and every passage. If you did not understand, there is no way I will know if you understood or you did not understand. For me to know if you are understanding, if this training is helping, do I have to repeat something all over again, or do I have to talk about any problem areas or clarify your doubts? There are lines open throughout the session. You need to call and ask. If you don't ask, I will not know, and this program is not going to be successful. Again, I am going to show you this particular slide which I prepared during the break time. Let's have this slide, please. I said important message for every college student and placement heads in the college. This program has been designed and created to help the student excel in their campus drives. We have incorporated interactive medium so that students can call and ask questions or clarify their doubts. Since the last 9 days, there had been no calls at all. If students don't call or ask or request for specific help or ask me to repeat any specific topic, the program won't be successful. Capgemini Drive had only 5% students getting placed in Tirupati. Now this can improve. Out of 3,000, only 160 got placed. Obviously, it's not a good conversion. The conversion can improve if only students show enthusiasm and participate. Then I am saying, despite the opportunity, if students don't take the benefit, the program will not be helpful. This program has been created, designed and executed for you. It's up to you to take the maximum benefit. We are providing all the platform. You have a tool where you can practice. You have a session where you can learn. You have a medium where you can ask questions. So if you don't make use of it, obviously it's not going to be successful. I hope there will be some change tomorrow. Every day I come with a hope that I will get calls. So again, I am hoping that tomorrow the interactive session will be successful. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you for today.